All right, sounds like we're ready. So I'm going to assume public access is ready back there. We got a thumbs up. All righty, welcome to the City of Wausau Council Chambers. It is Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, 6:42 p.m. And you're at a Common Council of the City of Wausau meeting. Welcome, everybody. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Next up, the clerk will call the roll digitally.
We have 11 voting members present.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next up, proclamations. You have a couple in your packet and a couple online. I have one that I'd like to read because our guest is here to maybe just fill us in a little bit on what they're doing. This is for Constitution Week, whereas our Constitution is founded on fundamental trust in America's citizens, and whereas on September 17th, 1787, our constitutional framers signed the U.S. Constitution at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, forging a new government for the United States. And whereas the story of the framing, signing, and adoption of that epical document constitutes one of the most significant chapters in the history of our country. And whereas the United States Constitution stands as a testament to the tenacity of Americans throughout history to maintain their liberties, freedoms, and inalienable rights. And whereas it is fitting that every American should reflect upon the vision and fortitude of our forebears in creating a charter designed to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the generational welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and for the fortunate millions who were to follow them as citizens in this nation. And whereas the Congress, by a joint resolution approved August 2nd, 1956, has requested the President set aside a week beginning of September 17th of each year as Constitution Week, a time for the contemplation and commemoration of the historic acts which resulted in the formation of our Constitution. And whereas September 17th marks the 236th anniversary of the Constitution of the United States, and we celebrate this founding charter and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves now. Therefore, it be it resolved that I, Katie Rosenberg, Mayor of the City of Wausau, do hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2023 as Constitution Week in the City of Wausau, State of Wisconsin, and I commend this observance to all citizens and encourage them to demonstrate our commitment to the United States of America and appreciation for liberty and our constitutional framers secured for us. And I know we have someone here who'd like to accept this, so if you'd like to join me, maybe give us a couple of comments about your organization, and I'll come down and give this to you.
Can we? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're with the Daughters of American Revolution, the Wausau chapter. This is our regent, Donna Zipton, and I'm Jane Johnson. And I've spent this whole last week traveling the city of Wausau, reminding people of Constitution Week, and I hope that you all will join in celebrating this wonderful proclamation that we have and be very happy that you live in America and a wonderful place like Wausau, Wisconsin. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we can clap for the Constitution. Okay, next up, it's not agendized, but I'm going to go ahead and allow our city attorney to make an announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy and proud, first of all, to introduce you to the newest addition to our office. She's not a new attorney, but we're very happy to have her. This is her second week. And I'd like to invite Tegan Troutner up to the podium for just a second, please, if you'd like to say a few words of introduction about yourself.
No pressure.
So Tegan Troutner is our new assistant city attorney.
Hi. Yeah, so my name is Tegan Troutner. I come to you from Utah. I've been a lawyer for about 8 years there. Decided to move to Wisconsin with my husband. So, yeah, I've been a government attorney practicing for the state and the county, and now I'm happy to be a part of city government. So, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tegan.
Alrighty. So next up, we have pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. I have quite a list, so I'm going to call you out, and when I call you up, you can give your name and address for the record, and then you get 3 minutes to share your comments. First up, Sherry Clifford.
Sorry about that, I'm getting over a cold. I am Sherry Clifford from 201 Wyatt Street, across from the single-family lots under review. I oppose the proposal to allow spot planning and then develop low-income rental housing on contaminated land. The site held 2 underground storage tanks of 2,500 gallons of fuel and 1 hoist tank of hydraulic fuel. Some remediation has taken place, however, the DNR has laid out continuing obligations of the closure letter. The letter states that all current and future owners and occupants of the property and right-of-way holders need to be aware that excavation of the contaminated soil may pose an inhalation or other direct contact hazard. As a result of special precautions may need to be taken to prevent direct contact health threat to humans. The letter states that the vapor risk is not a concern, as there was no structures on the property at the time of the review. Clearly, this proposal will put structures on the site. Does this plan address what vapor risks the new residents would experience? Does the city have the reserves for a class action lawsuit from residents exposed to hazardous conditions? To avoid disruption of the soil, the proposed complex excludes a basement. The complex would be built 2 to 3 feet above ground with surrounding berm to boost it out of the floodplain. I still haven't figured out how this complex will not disturb the contaminated soil unless somehow it doesn't have footings. Will the city purchase flood insurance to protect this $1.5 million investment? Or will taxpayers pay for the damage when this raised structure settles or shifts in the next flood? I have a basement to shelter in tornadic weather. Where will the residents, some who are disabled, go in this situation? The runoff from the large roof will use a gutter system to divert the water to the storm drains. The storm drain is directly across the road, and the runoff flows unfiltered into the Wisconsin River. The water not captured by the gutters must go somewhere. Will it go down the berm to the neighbors' yards and the basements, to the river? The DNR also states that the groundwater flow direction has been consistently observed to be south-southeast towards the Wisconsin River. The city has worked too hard to improve the river and may compromise this progress with this project. Additional concerns that I have are, what remedies do you have if the North Central Community Action Organization fails to take care of the property or address nuisance complaints from the neighbors? What if the organization itself fails? The lot nearest me would lose about 10 mature trees, which provide green space environmental benefits. Will the current trees be replaced with mature trees? There are no sidewalks for blocks in either direction. A wheelchair could maneuver the street the length of 3 football fields to the nearest bus stop in the summer, but the winter street is impassable. Most of the homes in the neighborhood are 2 to 3 bedrooms per lot, with many homes having 1. The complex would have 10 beds physically on 2 lots. The density is too high. The renderings of the complex are not congruent to the area. It has been suggested to look like a motel built by Wausau Homes in 1974. I couldn't find any neighborhood homes that style or that color change. The complex itself would be taller than the neighborhood homes, blocking views, open space, and sunlight. With inadequate public transportation, no grocery stores, schools, pharmacy, or other essential services, low-income residents need to drive or have food delivery services, increasing traffic further. At the planning meeting, we heard that residents may stay for 6 months. With 6 families moving in and out twice a year, that'd be 24 moving trucks that could be in the neighborhood.
I'm
just
sorry
for
to
this
interrupt.
complex.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you. Please
Thank you.
explore alternative solutions.
Thank you. Next up, Bob Jen.
What is it?
Oh, well,
Bob Yanes, 1625 Cleveland Avenue. Every household I spoke to on the petition surrounding Wyatt does not want and is opposed to this rezoning. Taxpayers and the voting public have spoken very loud and very clear. This is about spot zoning in an inappropriate location and protecting the fabric of Wausau family neighborhoods. Many property owners have lived here 40 to 70 years. Several have just purchased recently based on the existing neighborhood. We must preserve, protect, promote their intentions, maintaining property values now and in the future. This apartment will not enhance our neighborhood. Precedence has been set by this council voting down the spot rezoning nearby on Chella Street and other parcels. Speaking with William Hebert, stating to me in the past on previous lots and floodplain issues, zoning is single family, and the long-term outlook is single family as well. The entire area is AE floodplain, and it's not a matter of if a flood will occur, it is a matter of when. To my knowledge, a handful of houses are built out of the flood stage, but all homes on Wyatt Street and surrounding are not compliant with current FEMA floodplain standards. Needing flood insurance would certainly be at more risk when a flood, ice dam, or torrential rain occurs. Your current model in the plan is not compliant. What happens to all the homeowners around this built-up site needing an approximately 3 feet high and 15 feet dry access apron around the structure to meet flood compliance? Spot zoning and flood concerns are just two of the many issues. Another is contamination. I contacted DNR Remediation and Development Team, D. Lance and Dave Larson. They stated you must comply with the continuing obligation of this investigation. Over a 100-page investigation report is right here, a 100-page investigative report, as mentioned earlier in the planning and zoning meeting. Capping the site is not a fix. Closure of an investigation report does not mean it's resolved or closed. If any building occurs, remediation must as well. This site is not zoned properly and is a severe to extreme floodplain. It's also contaminated. Our neighborhood did not ask for this spot zoning change. This is not a positive change and is affecting all of us negatively. I ask you to care and to please listen to us by upholding the integrity of your own city's zoning laws. All we ask is to keep zoning the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Shirley Yang.
City Council, Mayor, thank you. My name is Shirley Yane, 1625 Cleveland Avenue. An incomplete proposal continues to be presented by the city to the City Council. Back in August, as the city sent this proposal to HUD for funding, so did our neighborhood address the proposal, stating factual objections to HUD. Jerry Weira, Director of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in Milwaukee, stated in his email to us, quote, "The HUD Region 5 environmental staff found your objections valid. Due to the deficiencies in the proposal, HUD will not approve the city's request to release the funds," unquote. And I have that email. The agenda that's proposed by the city to the City Council leadership has the same incomplete plan and misleading statements as in August. FEMA rules are not being applied, drawings are not showing the needed elevations, and soil contamination is still an outstanding issue. If a local developer would come before the council with an incomplete plan, it would be denied. But tonight, it's all about zoning change. Individuals, families purchase a property based on zoning, and they rely on a zoning code to protect this investment, their home. In the 471-page online zoning code, the city notes locations appropriate for apartment living, not in the middle of a residential area. Any proposed zoning change must be compliant per section 23.10.30 of the code. The rezoning proposal is not compliant due to, 1, the loss of investment to citizens as it does not preserve, protect, and promote property values, and 2, the safety and overall well-being of our community is not protected or preserved. The increase of vehicles both driving and parking on a narrow street where people, children, walk and bike will create fear, frustration, and emotional distress, referring to 23.01.03 of the code. Spot rezonings have been denied in the past. Allowing spot rezoning is opening up every residential zone in our city to possible unwanted projects. Should all areas of Wausau that each of you represent fear a zoning change in their neighborhood, Please build apartments in the proper zoning area. It is that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Yvonne Prey.
Good evening. My name is Yvonne Prey, and I'm a real estate agent that has been practicing in Marathon County for over 40 years. I'll be very brief, but I am here to talk about the same thing, file number 230906. I think that erecting a multifamily property in this area would greatly devalue the neighboring properties, and especially the Yane property, which is worth over $700,000 across the street. It's right on the corner of Cleveland and Wyatt. I don't have much to say other than my objection. However, I could provide the council with, if I did more research, with numerous examples of how it affects other properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Dave Hannon.
It's Daniel Hannon.
Oh, okay.
Hello, council. My name is Daniel Hannon. I own the property on 1621 Cleveland Avenue, almost across from where the driving way plan was for this property. My wife and I purchased this property a year ago. I'm going to be brief too. I don't feel I'm quite as prepared as some of the people ahead of me. I will just say I probably wouldn't have bought that property had I known there was a apartment building or a multifamily residence there. I 100% agree with this is a residential neighborhood. That's why my wife and I purchased the property. Traffic is pretty, for us, we come from the country, so any traffic is a lot for us. But traffic's a lot on that road right now, to be honest with you. I couldn't imagine, X amount of cars, I don't know what that is, 10 times 2 probably, or the lack of public transportation. Those are issues. So I oppose the proposal for rezoning, for Wyatt Street. I just want to be clear, single-family residences on those lots, now I don't know enough about the environmental issues that have been raised, but single-family residents would not be opposed by me. That's what the neighborhood's intended for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Andy Grundman.
Hi, I'm Andy Grunman. My family owns Pat's Body Shop down there in the Hollow. We have gone through different attempts to actually add on to our shop. Our shop's been there since 1953. We love the Hollow, and I find it odd here that you guys are trying to put together zoning changes to add in a big building and not have it actually meet all the standards that you guys wanted me to meet with my shop. So I oppose this building also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, I have Brianna Salkowski.
Hi, my name is Brianna Salkowski. I live at 151030 Sage Lane in Wausau. This city-owned property is in the floodplain. Rezoning and building this proposed structure will put all other surrounding homes at greater risk of flooding. Is this project and rezoning more important than the risk to the surrounding homes in this community? Your vote will reflect how you value the current families, their homes, and their safety. Your vote will reflect how you value every single homeowner that owns property in this neighborhood. Your vote will reflect how you value the taxpayers in this neighborhood who have lived there for many years. They're trying to cultivate a community, who have paid their taxes to the city, who have paid their expensive flood insurance, people who have done the right thing. I hope your vote is no. Voting in favor will mean you feel this project is more important than the people in this neighborhood. Listen and vote with the people, including the 77 that have petitioned, that are against the rezoning of 208, 210, and 214 Wyatt Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Preston Yane.
everyone. My name is Preston Yane. I live at 1521 Lakeview Ave. Per the Wausau zoning code section 231030, which I will cite throughout my 3 minutes today, this proposed zoning amendment is not in compliance. Per the zoning code, any proposed amendment must protect the health, safety, morals, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the public. The public, in this case, the established community, has signed a petition against the rezoning. The public has signed because of their health, safety, morals, convenience, and our general welfare are not being heard or protected with this proposed amendment. Protecting health and safety does not include breaking ground and disturbing soil on these lots, which will send cancer-causing contaminants airborne and allow for their spread by water runoff. If this property is instead capped and built upon, the existing soil contamination will negatively impact the Wisconsin River and our groundwater forever. Circumventing the DNR requirement to further remediate this property protects no one. Protecting our comfort does not include an increased volume of sewage and stormwater due to concentrated number of new residents. Lift stations and our sewer and sanitary will be put under higher workload and force yet another sewage backup into homes in this area. How will this property displace floodwaters? And which neighboring properties will receive a greater impact during a flood? Failure to make the community aware of a flood study or present a project plan that meets federal and local floodplain requirements leaves me feeling less than protected and scared. The tight intersections, blind corridors, and lack of sidewalks at Wyatt and Cleveland and Wyatt and Lakeview play a major safety risk when motor vehicle traffic is further concentrated. A typical city street is 32 feet or more wide. Lakeview entrance off of Wyatt, directly adjacent to this property, only measures 18 to 19 feet wide. This creates a bottleneck and added risks for pedestrians and traffic increases. Buying a home is one of the biggest investments anyone will make. Per the zoning code, any proposed amendment must preserve, protect, and promote property values. Single-family residential communities are desirable and most valued communities to live in. Rezoning this community to something other than single-family residential will not preserve, protect, or promote home values, resulting in loss of investment to the existing citizens. Comparing and trying to match the human density of this multifamily project to the density of 3 separate single-family homes is not feasible. The floodplain zoning restrictions, which include the 15 feet dry land access around the entire structure, setbacks, in conjunction with the minimum square footage of the home itself, these lots do not allow for 3 single-family homes to be built. Per the zoning code, any proposed amendment must also reflect the scale, character, urban design of the existing neighborhoods. The existing neighborhood is single-family neighborhood. Rezoning to anything else will not reflect the scale or design of the existing neighborhood. The scale of this project is more than twice the size of the existing homes in the area. Please follow the public officials' code of ethics, nurture the faith and confidence we have in you, vote with compliance, vote with the community you represent, vote against the rezoning of 208, 210, and 214 Wyatt Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Diane Senholtz, and maybe at the same time, Tony Francis, or maybe.
Good evening. I'm Diane Sunholz with North Central Community Action Program, and this is Tony Francis, my Program Director of Weatherization, also with North Central CAP. We wanted to speak briefly on the affordable housing project that we hope to be part of in the city of Wausau. And we didn't think we were creating a problem. We are trying to address a shortage of affordable housing. And while the proposed project is small, it will be helpful for 6 households by providing additional housing in our community for folks who earn under a certain level of income. For a single person, that income is $3,245 a month, or $18.72 an hour. This is the average wage of people who work in production at Colby & Colby, Line Tech, Crystal Finishing, as well as several other office administrative positions, like those who work at Target, Walmart, Walgreens, and many other local businesses. Affordable housing basically means that housing costs equal about 30% of the household income. So if the average person makes $3,200 a month, they should spend about $960 for their rent and utilities. The rents for this project would most likely be a small amount below the standard fair market rents, simply because utilities would not be included. An income would be required for this housing project, as it's not a shelter and it won't house the homeless. North Central CAP does have a lot of experience with affordable housing projects, as we've operated a 6-unit complex in Marshfield for the last 23 years. We own this complex. I received an email from Deb Ryan asking about our headquarters, which is located in Wisconsin Rapids, and that is our main office. We do rent that property and the warehouse there, but we own Tapestry. Our average tenancy at Capistry is just over 5 years. Our longest tenancy was 13 years. We have not had issues with crime or other problems. We maintain our property so that our tenants are safe and they enjoy their living environment. We connect regularly with our tenants so that if they are in need of something, we're able to help them. We regularly work with several nonprofits, schools, healthcare clinics, many churches, so our network of help is extensive for our clients and our tenants. And a lot of times our tenants don't need anything but a safe place to live. So I really felt strong about this affordable housing project, and if it doesn't happen at this location, I do hope it happens somewhere in the city of Wausau, because we are a great resource for the city of Marshfield, and our tenants really appreciate living where they live. We do take care of our properties. So thank you.
Thank you.
Should we restart?
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself one more time? Thank you.
Hi, again, I'm Tony Francis from North Central Community Action Program. I came here today in support of this project. What I would like to offer to you is just a little factual information about our unit in Marshfield that I've been involved with for the last 13 years. I take care of all the maintenance on the property, all 6 apartments inside the entire building, all the grounds. Our tenants do a very good job of taking care of their own apartments as far as maintaining. I do not have a lot of extra work to take care of the apartments. It's my feeling that our tenants, as you heard Diane say, it's longevity is a thing for us. I think it's, bless you, I think it's because it is an affordable place to stay for them, and they appreciate that, and they know they can't get that elsewhere. So they take very good care of the property. It's very clean outside. I don't get any complaints. I did contact Lois, the mayor of City of Marshfield, just to verify that there hasn't been any issues with our building or our tenants for the City of Marshfield. She assured me of that. I don't get anything beneficial to this for me. If anything, I have more work to do for the same amount of pay because we're a nonprofit. But I do think it's very important that you have good housing, affordable housing for these people. And as you've heard, it's not what I would consider low income, it's affordable housing. I don't see this as being a problem, or I wouldn't have taken the time to come to this meeting today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Ben Lee.
Hi, most of you know me. Ben Lee, I'm here representing United Way Marathon County, along with the Housing Task Force in Marathon County. And you'll probably remember that I made the recommendation to invest funds in affordable housing in this community almost a year ago. And I'm here to support the project. At the time, it was a recommendation that was widely praised. And when you voted to pass the recommendation, that was also widely praised because it's no mystery that Wausau has an extreme shortage of affordable housing, especially in today's market. It ranked, the recommendation ranked number 1 on our priority list, and when you adopted those recommendations, you adopted them in the priority that we presented them. And we spent about 6 months looking at the inventory of apartments, assistance requests, the average wages in our community, and how we could be most impactful and have long-term sustainable change for the Wausau community with once-in-a-lifetime dollars when it comes to our ARPA funds. Shortly after that recommendation was adopted, the LIFE report was released, and it reiterated our findings that financial hardship is absolutely crushing families in Wausau. The ALICE report was then released, and that reiterated our findings that 42% of the residents of Wausau are living paycheck to paycheck. And then the regional housing study reiterated this as well, which says we are currently 359 units short of the inventory that we need for people to have affordable housing. And these are all widely accepted things. I don't want to come here and discredit any of the community members that are here that I also represent. And that if they ever fall on hard times, I'll be there to make sure that we can feed and we can house them as well. However, at the end of the day, I have a quote that I wanted to read, and it's that the market will never provide sufficient and affordable housing for people because it is not profitable to do so. Hence the need for government intervention, and that's what we're asking for now. By doing so, we're also protecting Alice families from being pushed out of the market because we're also trying to recruit highly qualified individuals to come here and be part of our tax base and live here. And so I support the project, but I also understand the concerns that are laid forth. And if it can't happen in this neighborhood, I think the city council has a lot of looking inward to do about where can it happen and how is it going to happen? Because the citizens in this city are getting absolutely demolished by the cost of living. I see it in the food pantry lines. I see it in the transitional living programs that we have in this community. And we have to do something to represent the folks in this community. And then the last thing that I'll add, I'll go just a couple seconds over here, is that North Central Community Action Program has been a fantastic partner and has on average invested $1.2 million in this community every single year to keep people from becoming homeless. And when we were in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, they were also responsible for our WERA administration as a community to make sure that people didn't lose their homes when they lost their jobs. And so I think this is the first step of many in creating affordable housing. And if it can't happen in this neighborhood, then we have to be quick in figuring out what neighborhood it can happen in.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
comments. Next up, I have Richard Luzet. That's right.
I'll come up here with Patrick. I'll let Patrick speak first.
Hi there. My name is Patrick Bacher, and I live at 505 South 22nd Avenue. We're going to shift gears for you guys for just a moment, but we're here to discuss the vacation of the end of 22nd Avenue and the alley end of 22nd Avenue, closest to Stewart Avenue. So this would be a property that is located directly next to our home. We're not against the idea of the property owner converting it into parking spaces, but we have concerns due to past experience with Godorsey Companies. About 15 years ago, Godorsey Companies tore down 5 homes around us and made this additional parking for his commercial buildings, and he promised a solid fence, and the fence was not solid. It was slatted. I do have photos here with me, but I didn't bring them up to the podium. You want to grab them? Sure. Thank you. And so that was, and when we complained when that not up to code fence went up, we were told, hey, we already purchased this fence, so this is what you get. We did ask the city to plant a couple of trees to replace the loss of trees that were taken down as well, and the city planted a maple for us that blocked our view of Jimmy John's. I can imagine no one here would appreciate a view of Jimmy John's or the drive-through. So we understand the plan, and we did speak with Mr. Radance from REI, but we would like reassurance about the plan. Going forward, we would appreciate an 8-foot fence between us and our commercial neighbor. We would also like that fence to cross over the street so that we don't have light pollution. So when cars are coming into the restaurants and sandwich shops and other businesses, their headlights shine through the existing fence and into our home and our property. We have lived in our house for 18 years, and we put a lot of our personal time, a lot of our money. It's really our life savings. In the past year alone, we have spent an additional $20,000 on improvements for our property. So we have a nice home. We love our home. We just want our neighbor going forward to communicate with us and make sure that promises made to Planning Commission meetings are actually upheld. We would like our concerns validated. And, I'm just going to hand a little packet. There's 7 photos in here. If you just want to look at them, there's a brief explanation on the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, did you want to speak?
Yes, please.
All right.
My
My name is Richard Luze. I live at 505 South 22nd Avenue also. I would like to request that assigned parking on the new addition where these parking spots are going in, these 22 spots, be assigned to the recruiting centers. And not have anyone from Jimmy John's be parking there. Our bedrooms are on the north side of the house, and it'll be right basically below us. And they leave there 11:30 at night, and they're never quiet. That's one of the things. We have dealt with poor conditions for 18 years. From Godorsey, from blowing leaves from their property onto our side in the boulevard, through the fence, cigarette butts. They've never cleaned them up. Broken promises of a fence that was supposed to be solid, but it wasn't. It was slatted. Garbage dumpsters, I'd like to know where the garbage dumpsters are going to be, if they're going to stay where they are now, or if they're going to be moved somewhere where they're going to be right next to homes. And the 8-foot solid fence, the fence that's proposed right now is a 6-foot solid fence on top of blocks that are 2 feet. We request that they be an 8-foot solid fence on the above of the blocks. And how much more is going to be allowed as far as encroachment to our neighborhood? There's a school there, a Montessori school is there. We love our little quiet neighborhood. It's all boxed in on each side. We have the park and everything. It's easy access to a lot of things. But it seems like Godorsey wants to buy, seems like he's buying up properties more and more and more. Like, how much is going to be allowed to go in? All right, that's all I need to say. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
And last up, I have Mark Blaubach.
Hi there. My name is Mark Blaubach, 307 M Street. I'm speaking to you as a resident who lives nowhere near this project. So why am I here? The same reason every one of you should be concerned about this project, and every one of you in this audience should be concerned. Because even though this project is not in sight of me on Wyatt Street, even though the runoff would not affect me, even though the contamination in the ground would not affect me or the vapors, even though I will never see any traffic going to and from this because it's going on the other side of me in the other direction to town, even though all these things that you've heard, all these statistics and recitations of concerns from neighbors that are directly affected, even though none of that really affects me, I'm here because of the precedent this would set. The reason that everyone that's on the council should be concerned about spot rezoning, and everyone in this audience should be concerned, is that when you bought your house, think of when you bought your house. What made your decision to buy this house? Now, I'm a retired real estate investor, both residential, single family, like this neighborhood is, multifamily, like the proposed project, and commercial. So I'm speaking from experience on how people make their buying decision. My wife, Faye, is a retired realtor. And the information that I get from her and the information that I use to process whether to buy a property is the same information each and every one of you used when you bought your house. You looked at your house, you looked at what surrounded your house, you looked at the neighborhood, and you thought to yourself, this is a good place to be. This is where I want to live. And you base that information on what you saw around you, the type of houses that were around you, the type of residences that were around you, the type of people that lived in that neighborhood. Were those people you wanted to be around? Now, no one is arguing that the CAP project is not a good project. No one is arguing that the United Way sponsoring their affordable housing is not a good thing. But the city, by spot rezoning in the middle of a neighborhood like that, is changing, setting a dangerous precedent, besides all the contamination and opening up that can of worms. everyone on the council has to ask yourself, is this the place for this project? And if you're a common sense, logical person, the answer to that question is an out-and-out no. There's a lot of other places that are not in the floodplain that don't open up a can of worms of contamination. The West Side Battery Building has been unproductive and not paying taxes for years. If you want affordable housing, and if you want to support United Way, and you want to support the CAP project, look at that. It's the perfect location. You can build on it, you already own it, you don't tick off all the neighbors, and you don't ruin the property values, and you don't change the essence of Wausau and the reason that people bought the homes and the reason that people live in the homes they live in this great city. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our public comment section here. So I guess at this point, I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. This is file number 230801 through file number 230904. Looks like I have an almost motion. I have a motion by Alder Hinkie and a second by Alder Lukens. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may vote. Passes 11-0.
Thank you. Next up, we have appointments. I don't have anything for you. Followed by file number 230604. This is a resolution from CISM and Plan Commission for vacating and discontinuing an area of right-of-way abutting 505 South 21st Avenue, a portion of 509 South 21st Avenue, a portion of 514 South 21st Avenue, and a portion of 2111 Stewart Avenue. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Alder Hinkie and a second by Alder Dinney. Is there any discussion? Alder Martins.
All right. Excuse me. I guess I'll start things off. And what I'm going to say is really going to apply to all of the three following resolutions, but I'll just say it once because I don't need to repeat myself and be a broken record. On these resolutions of vacating the right-of-way, I think this gives an opportunity for Godorsey to fix some deficiencies that have happened in this area. Deficiencies with the boardwalk developments. There's definitely a limited parking in the front of the building. Moving some of that parking into the rear will definitely make a difference for the businesses that are established there. And deficiencies on the other side of that fence, adding the green buffer and rebuilding that fence so that it meets it addresses the concerns of the property owners adjacent on the other side of that fence. A truly solid 8-foot fence, and leaving or reestablishing mature trees in the neighborhood in order to minimize the noise that happens from the restaurants on the other side of the property. It is definitely, it's been a long time concern for the property owners there, and that needs to be addressed. And this would give the developer the opportunity to address those issues and to make right to the neighborhood what was promised a very long time ago. So I've talked to the property owner. I'm generally in favor of this. If the developer takes up these concessions and does the right thing as this development project moves forward. Just in the final words of that great poet Robert Frost, good fences make good neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just speak once on all three of these as well. What these doesn't say is how this is going to benefit the neighborhood. You know, not going to support this. I don't think the Dorsey companies, from my experience in my 20 years of living in District 10, outdoorsy companies and a good neighbor don't belong in the same sentence. And I'll just leave it at that. I share Patrick and Richard's concerns about broken promises. I've been promised 3 years ago changes, building upgrades that he owns in my district. And I've been promised that for 3 years now, and it's still an empty promise there. So I share the concerns there, and I just think that, they've been going by this long enough. This has been, I think, 2006, I read in the packet that this was built. There's been efficient parking up till then, and all of a sudden they need extra parking, they need extra encroachment on the neighborhood, and I just don't see it as a positive change for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Henke.
Thank you, Mayor. This is in my district. As Patrick and Richard said, they're not against it. They would just like to hear their concerns answered. This is discontinuing of the right-of-way. I feel like we have another chance. I'd like to see a lot of their concerns before I do anything with changing zoning, which I'm sure is going to have to be involved. So I guess I'll be supporting this as of now, and I'd like to see a lot of their concerns fleshed out in more detail before we do anything with zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Lukens.
Thank you. I would agree with Alder Henke. I would like to see their concerns addressed as well. I think that what was promised needs to be made right, and if it were in my yard, I would want that 8-foot fence. I mean, it should be what was promised. So along with Alder Henke, I would like to see that made right to before any kind of zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will support this. And I think I'm looking more at the businesses that are currently there. Some of the restaurants really need the parking so the employees can be out of that front entry area. So I think it makes sense for them, but it's also an opportunity, I think, then to address what Patrick had said. Some issues seem to be fairly simple to overcome. So let's see if we can work together and make that happen for them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Thanks to the residents for bringing the photos, because I think this helps us with a visual depiction of what we're dealing with. We did talk about this in CISM. At that point, Tom Redens from REI was in attendance. We were clear about the need for them when we approved this to work with the neighbors and work with the neighbors as a good neighbor. The depiction of the fencing that they are requesting, which is in existence, the solid panel fencing that exists behind People's State Bank, isn't an unreasonable ask. I think we had talked about the need for high-quality fencing materials for a number of years. My office was a tenant in one of those buildings that behind it ran the wooden fence that keeps falling down that they have a great picture of in here. That isn't necessary. It's hundreds of feet in length. I'm sure it's expensive to replace, but I think when you go forward with new fencing, you need a better product than that. So I will say that I'm going to support this also, but with a directive that the property owner and REI work with those neighbors and get a solution that's equitable for both parties there. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else requesting to speak, except for now. I see Alder Gisselman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be voting against this for a couple reasons. I don't see that we have any kind of acknowledgement from the developers that anything is going to happen. Their history, I think, speaks to what has happened and perhaps what's going to be happening in the future. I think that as the neighbors have approached the developers, we don't see any action. So where do we see the potential of some action now? I think that so I'm not seeing any possible potential for some kind of action to remediate the neighbors. And also, I'm generally against development intrusion into neighborhoods. I think we're seeing this now, and what is already happening to this neighborhood off 21st, and I'm leery of that. I think we heard enough about neighborhoods already this evening, and I think that they're a very important part of the city of Wausau, and I think that we have to be careful and, as a city council, be leery about intrusions into neighborhoods. I will be voting against these proposals. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any more comments? Not seeing. Oh, Alder Lukens.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman makes a good point. I mean, I did say that before any zoning change, I would like to see that resolved. But so would there be cause for an amendment to the motion, or no?
I'm looking at our, would we need to,
Or-
if we wanted
I
something
don't know what you
official?
mean by cause. I mean, you're free to make an amendment to the motion if you want to change it in some way.
I guess I'm just wondering,
But
well.
it is a vacating and discontinuing a right-of-way. So I don't know what, I'm trying to imagine what
Well,
germane
it
thing you
would
might
go-
add.
It would go to zoning after this, right?
Why
So-
don't we call somebody up?
That's-
Bill Hebert's nodding his head.
Okay.
Maybe we need a bit of an explanation from a
Could you?
staff member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I would have to come back for zoning. This is just to vacate the right-of-way so that they can change the underlying right-of-way along with the zoning to do the parking lot. And I believe that it's planned for public hearing next month.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, I think we are ready to vote on this first item.
You may vote. Motion passes 7-4.
All right, thank you. We are now on to file number 230605. This is another resolution from SISM and Plan, vacating and discontinuing an alley bounded by a portion of the alley north of Wagner Street abutting 503 South 22nd Avenue and a portion of 514 South 21st Avenue. Looks like I have a motion by Alder Henke and a second by Alder Dinney. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
You may vote. Motion passes 7-4.
All right, thank you. Next up is file number 230606, another resolution from SISM and Plan, vacating and discontinuing an area of right-of-way abutting 503 South 22nd Avenue, a portion of 2111 Stewart Avenue, and a portion of 2205 Stewart Avenue. It looks like I have a motion by Alder Henke and a second by Alder Rasmussen. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may vote. Motion passes 7-4.
All right, thank you very much. We are moving on to file number 230906. This is an ordinance rezone request from Plan Commission on 208, 210, and 214 Wyatt Street from a single-family residence to a multifamily residential. This does require 3/4 vote. Looks like I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Herbst. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess I have just a few comments. You know, a number of months ago when we were trying to figure out how we could make the proper community impacts with our ARPA dollars, we directed our community development department to go forward and create affordable housing and spend a bunch of money to do it, to make that impact, to create those units where people can afford to rent. And we often get criticized for creating and helping things get created that people can't afford. Well, here's a chance to do the opposite. So it's 6 units, not 16. Let's be clear about that part. You know, I think this site has been sorely underutilized for a very long time. What it was before was certainly less productive in terms of land use than a residential property. I feel like the land use is appropriate. I think that this is a chance to bring affordable homes to 6 folks who need it. I think that the comments that we received from North Central Community Action and United Way should be taken to heart. These properties will be built slab on grade for a reason. When we talked about other challenge sites, some along the Thomas Street corridor, some remnants, we talked about some other properties where we've built townhomes in the city. Those don't have basements, and they function just fine. I think that, I guess I will say, I think there's a misunderstanding about what affordable means sometimes. I think people sometimes assume that, the people who move in and live in those units aren't people you want to be around. What impact are they going to create to our neighborhood? I mean, is their mere presence there renting those units going to drag down someone else's home and someone else's property value? That answer ought to be no. And I think if we really took stock of what affordable means, and I'm glad that Ms. Senholz mentioned what the income qualifying requirement for a single person is to qualify. Without my spouse, I qualify. There's a whole population in this community that if a single person had to live on the income they make and they don't have their spouse to rely on, they can't make it. And I think it's disingenuous and hypocritical for us to deny a project like this and not let a project like this take flight when we pontificate continuously, all of us, every one of us, when the Housing Task Force came in here and said, city, you are missing housing in every income tier, at every rent rate. Take action. And we adopted that plan and said, yes, we must do that. And then here we sit fighting about whether or not 6 people moving into a neighborhood is the demise of that neighborhood. And I think that I think Ben Lee's comments about looking inward about what it is we actually mean when we say we want to create things where people can afford to live. Well, if not here, where? Is everywhere you go to build a 6-unit apartment building, are we going to all come out and complain that we don't want it in our district and we don't want it in our neighborhood and we don't want it on this site or that site? On the site of a former automotive shop? Come on. So, I think that if we ever want to achieve the objectives of the Housing Task Force recommendations, we can't do it if we deny stuff like this when it comes to us. There's a huge need for this in this community. And, I can appreciate the comments from, an entire family that turned out tonight to talk about how things are going to be devalued if this building comes. But also, we've had leaders from nonprofit groups come to us and say, we operate these in other areas. We take care of them. The people who live there haven't been a problem. And the one thing I will say, I have some community development housing in my district. And when there's a problem, they take care of it. And just like any other, property code exists, property code enforcement exists. If there's a problem, we work it through with our city employees like we do with any other property. But I think it's wrong to assume that just because someone builds a unit like this, that automatically is a negative. So I intend to support this project. I certainly hope that enough of us will to create the impact that we set out to make. So I guess if we have concerns about things like HUD and environmental and review, that we would call up the folks within our staff, our professionals that deal with this. Let's talk to Bill Hebert about the impact on the neighborhood. Let's talk about the recommendation that was made to the Planning Commission. Let's talk to Tammy about the plan for this project and the work that she's put in to create something where people can get a quality home, quality new home. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson, one moment, excuse me.
Just want to interrupt at this point and say to Alder Rasmussen's point, by ordinance, the council is required to consider the Plan Commission's recommendation. Your decision is final, but you must consider the factors that they took into account. And if you read Tammy's memo in your packet and the memo of the planners that were in the original report to the Plan Commission, they walk you objectively through the code as to the considerations that they had to look at. So while you can make the final decision and you don't always have to agree with the Plan Commission, I would recommend that you seriously review those and document, we need to document somehow that you have considered the Plan Commission's recommendation. And if you choose not to follow it, it would be beneficial for the record to have a reason why you're not supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not that I don't support this project. I mean, we all know we need affordable housing in this city. What I'm opposed to is where it's going. I don't know that I can go say any more than what my constituents had already come up here and said, but this is quite a tight-knit neighborhood here. You have over 70 people that have signed a petition against this, which speaks volumes. And I think what also speaks volumes too is the spot zoning. You know, it's what kind of precedents are we going to set here? These people have been denied improvements to their properties. They've been denied a duplex being built in here because of the floodplain, the area it's in. But all of a sudden, the city wants to come along and spot zone. And something else that Miss Shirley Yang brought up too was, I think that she mentioned some state zoning codes which this might be in violation of, and that's why I think maybe our city attorney should possibly look into this. I don't know if she could come up and mention these codes again, but I won't be supporting this. It's just not good for this neighborhood. It's a single-family, low-income neighborhood. You want to put some single-family homes there, you know, have at her. But the neighborhood's against it. I'm against it. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know, City Attorney, if you have the information you need to answer a question, if this is in violation of state statute.
I don't at this time, Mayor. I hadn't been asked to review that. I'm not
Okay.
prepared to address that. Another staff person may be able to, but I'm not. Sorry.
I'll maybe allow staff to consider whether or not they have that information. But I'm going to keep going down the list of alders ready to speak. So Alder Watson.
So I'm going to support the zoning change for today. And I think this location's a perfect neighborhood to welcome new residents, especially given the definition of those that would qualify for this, these housing units. I think those residents would share the same mentality that I've heard the residents speak to of tonight, that pride in the community, that joy of being there and being able to have a place called home. I mean, sadly, our affordable housing options right now are at a minimum. I mean, we have the Westside Battery development that's got the housing credits and is ready to go, but it's a little far out. You know, we're waiting and hoping that the Grand Avenue development for Commonwealth goes through and we can get those developments there. But this is desperately needed, I mean, for people to continue to live and thrive here. When I did drive through the neighborhood, I like to go down to DC Everest Park. It's sort of enjoyable, 3M Park and all that. And I really enjoyed seeing just the mix of real estate there. There's a lot of mix of houses. It was really eclectic, which I thought was neat because it's not like something that I saw in the drawings and the renderings and Plan Commission really seemed to go against. I mean, they were a lot of really cool looking homes back there. And I also think just by redeveloping this, we'll have the opportunity as the public entity we are to clean up and remediate that property like we need to. Because I think that's something that needs to be done. We don't want to continue to have this green space there that's full of toxic contaminants that those people are at the mercy to. So I do think, like, with regards to density, I think, I'm not sure what commissioner mentioned, but he made a good point that this would be 6 units on 3 parcels. So it's in essence spreading that out over 3 parcels. So it's not just on one. And I think, like I said, the character of the neighborhood, I think would fit well with the rendering that I saw. There's just some research too, because some of the arguments against having that development in the residential neighborhood just sort of, I wanted just to confirm some of the concerns. And for traffic on residential roads, It actually, there's been a couple studies, one specifically by the Joint Center of Housing Studies by Harvard. Granted, it was published in 2007, but it noted that people who lived in apartments actually drive and use their car 42 to 60% less than people in single-family homes, which I thought was interesting. And it's, through that housing study. There was also additional studies about home values, because I know that would be a concern of mine if I had something going up in my neighborhood. And so Georgia Tech School of Public Policy actually did a study, and this one was uber recent. I found they published their findings in 2023, August. And they actually showed, it was published in Cityscape, which is a HUD publication, and they showed that home values where market rate and subsidized units went into the neighborhoods, the property values rose by 5.4%, which is actually pretty cool. A couple other studies I found, it was either negligible or slight increases. So I think it would be, based on this study, which is really relatively recent, that sounds like a good omen for property values. I know the area is flush with a lot of recreational opportunities. When I was driving down there, tons of kids on bikes. And I think, just as the traffic is, there's lots of those parks there. I think adding these 6 units, I would hope, wouldn't increase that density too much. And after North Central Community Action Program spoke, I know what they do in Marshfield's amazing, and it would be just awesome to see these opportunities for our residents here to get just a solid house over their heads and be able to feel safe and comfortable in a place like this. So I'm definitely going to support this, and I hope you would too, because this is just 6 off of that 300 number, right? We have about 300 we need to get. This is just small, but it's 6 houses, 6 people, 6 families. That would make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. Alder Martins.
Thank you. I am in support of this resolution. I think housing is desperately needed. Housing of all price levels, and extremely needed is affordable housing. And this fits that need very well. Like Alder Watson said, I drove down the neighborhood today to take a look and to see how it actually would fit into the neighborhood, and it does. The renderings I've seen do seem to fit quite well into what's down there already. It is a mix of single family homes and looking at the housing stock down there, I would say of all different income levels. And I think this would be it seems like a great match for that. And we need the housing. The city's not going to grow any other way. We can't expand our boundaries, so we have to look inwards and where we can build, how we can increase our density, where we can stick those new construction to help increase our property values for everyone. Not only is housing desperately needed, but we need our tax base needs to grow. So that's why I'm in support of that. On the issue of zoning, of spot zoning, we've already set a precedent, and I don't like this precedent that we've set. So this is the 4th time that this year zoning issues have come to the council and from the Plan Commission that have been overwhelmingly approved by the Plan Commission and have been challenged by the council. 3 times prior to this, those zoning recommendations have failed. We have a potential in the 4th issue here. 2 of those zoning issues had to do with housing, new construction, and we're at a precipice. It's if we cannot take what the Plan Commission says and act on it in a positive manner, its development is going to fail in this city. We're at that point right now. This is the 4th time where we're challenging the recommendations of the Plan Commission here at the Common Council, and I don't like this. I don't like this precedent at all, because it's going to have that chilling effect that I talked about the last time when we had a zoning issue come before us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to
point out a positive tonight, not just on this item, but on others as well. And I think what we saw are, citizens coming of differing perspectives and opinions, again, not just on this item, but others. And it takes time out of one's day to do that, particularly in these times. And so I think it's very important and it's encouraging, and I think it's hard to have citizen-driven governance when citizens are absent. So on this item and others, regardless of the opinion or perspective, I would thank those who came tonight, and it's encouraging to see such citizen participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I took the city attorney's comments about being clear as to why we are not intending to follow the Plan Commission's recommendation and the documentation thereof as a little bit of a cautionary tale. Like Michael said, like Alder Martin said, we are at a precipice, and, we are getting to a point where if we are not going to follow the recommendations of our Plan Commission, we then basically render them moot. I mean, they're there for a reason. They exist for a reason to study these things and make a qualified recommendation. That panel even includes citizen members. So, I think we need to, rethink the idea of not following the Plan Commission's recommendation when it comes forward the way it has again now. That said, I think if there was a inappropriateness of the zoning compatibility under our new zoning code, the Plan Commission would have known about that and addressed it and voted accordingly. So with that, I think it's also important for us to recognize that each one of us here represents a voting population of somewhere between 3,200 and 3,500 residents. And in no way do we have, either by volume of petition or by volume of public comment, a majority of any one district weighing in on any one issue ever. And I think what we have to do is balance what we hear sometimes in this chamber with the recommendations of our committees, of our commissions, of our staff that we task to research these issues and bring qualified recommendations, which is what's happened here. With that, I would like to bring up our zoning administrator, Bill Hebert. I'd like him to come up and talk about the concept of spot zoning and why this fits in this area. Because if it was true spot zoning and it was two things that completely don't go together, like residences and manufacturing, that might be a different story. But I would like to hear from Bill Hebert. Thank you.
Looks like Bill is also trying to get his buddy up here too. Yeah. I can't see everyone.
I'm not a good public speaker like Brad Lenz, so if you want to invite him up afterwards, go ahead.
Either one of you is fine with me. Thank you.
I would just say to the spot zoning, this district has a low density. It's one of our lowest density apartment multifamily zoning districts, so it's like 12 units per acre. The SR 5 is 5 units per acre. So this is comparable in mixing with a neighborhood. It's not like this is going to be, we have districts that go up to 50 units per acre, some of our downtown stuff. We have something in the middle, like 20. So this is a corner property with 3 lots that, could have been built as 3 single-family houses and three, there's no question there could have been 3 bedrooms in each of those houses. So you're looking at 9 bedrooms compared to 10 bedrooms in one building. So I hope that answers your question.
Maybe you could just spot zoning is a pejorative, I'm assuming, and I don't really know. Would you say that this is what this request is?
I think, I think Brad would be able to answer that better, but
I see him getting up.
I hate to put him on the spot too.
That was my question that I wrote down. If this is spot zoning.
I would agree that it is a pejorative term mostly. In this case, and Bill, you did a fabulous job, by the way. Don't sell yourself short. According to our comp plan, the multifamily, single family, it's not as fine-grained in our comprehensive plan. It's all considered urban residential. So by that sense, even if it's 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, it's compatible, it's, it gets along with single-family residential. It's solidly residential. Like you said, it's not commercial, it's not industrial, it's not institutional. It's all residential. Generally, those things go well together, even commercial and residential. With our new zoning code and our comprehensive plan, a lot of those things go together just fine as well. But I would say, again, the staff report, as mentioned, outlines, our zoning code, which was referenced, that was the citation that was referenced, Chapter 23 is our zoning code, which we work with a lot. And, the recommendations come from that zoning code, and our recommendation was to approve it, so.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Okay. We have a couple more people in queue to speak, but I also want to recognize that we have staff here, and maybe if there's anything that we've missed, you could help us with this discussion. Alder Gisselman.
Yes, thank you. It's our job, the city council's job, really, to make the final decisions with regard to this. So that's why the job of this of the ordinances in front of us is pretty much our responsibility. So we have the obligation to look over the whole city and see if this fits. That's why we have a zoning code, a zoning map. Specifically, the map says that this is the zones that fits this neighborhood. I'm speaking against this zoning change because I think that, for one thing, the apartment doesn't fit the neighborhood. You may want to take a look around it, but it doesn't. That's why that zoning map is the way it is, because this neighborhood should have single-family, basically a single-family residences. I think that, and this debate today should not be about affordable housing. I've been for every affordable project there was, and upsets me that we have to raise the issue of affordable housing with this project. This is a zoning issue. If let's have a debate sometime with regard to how we're going to deal with affordable housing. I will be glad to join that discussion. But this is a zoning issue, and I think that as much as the Plan Commission may have studied this issue, I think that it doesn't fit the neighborhood, and I think that therefore I will be voting against this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Lukens.
Thank you. So I listened very carefully to all of the residents speaking, and I would agree with Alder Killian. I'm grateful for the input. I lived in that area for many years. I took my children sledding down Thream Hill, and so I'm familiar with the area, but I also drove past there and looked at the property. It's hard because I understand, there's never any perfect option. At the same time, I've sat through meeting after meeting after meeting, strategizing and watching the work of community development and the Housing Task Force, and also reading whenever there's an article about a development, reading over and over and over all the comments of people talking about the housing that we need and the affordable housing. And in the district I'm in, there is an affordable housing project going in, and a number of people are upset about that too. However, we are limited in our area, in our space. And so it is difficult because I take the input of residents very seriously, but I do know that we need to have the housing in order for us also to have employees for the jobs. Businesses are counting on this. it just, it's a huge web. So I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Herbst.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am on the planning committee, and I will let you know that I did not support this when I was on the committee and this was brought forth. These residents that are here tonight have been here now twice, once at the planning committee and now at council, absolutely pouring out their hearts regarding this multi-family residence. I really feel that there are enough vacant buildings that could be utilized for low-income housing or single. 6 apartments, to me, in my mind, is not going to make that big of a difference, especially if we are looking at 359 shortage. If we were to fill those 6, we're still down at 353 that we're below. To me, if someone like Yvonne Prey, who's been in the real estate business for decades, states that this is wrong for the area, I have to agree with her 100%, and I will tell you, I hope that you all vote accordingly, because I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think the principle here that I have to lean on is as Brad said, this fits with our comprehensive plan, and the Planning Commission takes the rezoning 4 criteria that they use, and generally speaking, I think they've done a very good job over the years of meeting those criteria by the letter of the law. That we did hear some issues, though, that did come up today that I am concerned. One is the consistency factor. It certainly sends the wrong message if we are not, and I don't have the tenor here to necessarily address that, but if that's an issue, I'd be concerned about that. The debate on whether the properties are affected, I lived on the East Hill since 2000, and about 15 years ago, we had a petition to try to stop housing to going into Wausau East, the old Wausau East. And in addition, there's 56 units that went in there, 32 units went in the townhomes in the 700 block of Fulton. I did not sign that petition at the time because I felt it was appropriate reutilization of that property. And as it turned out, the concerns about extra crime, increased traffic, really didn't bear out. And the houses, I can tell you, the house I sold on Adams Street 4 years ago to move into East High is now selling for about 40% more than what if I would have hung on to it. So I lost out moving in there. But we have a great community in that East Side neighborhood, and I really think we need to have an open mind to consider. And I did speak to a couple of citizens who were in favor of this, live right down the street. So it is not unanimous, but I don't think they were had a desire to come in and speak in public on it today. So, we're in a jam here, and as Mike said, what is the precedent? The precedent is our strategic plan, if you want to look at it, calls for finding ways to increase affordable housing in all areas. So we have to consider putting them in where we can. I am concerned about the contamination issue, and I think we need to address that outside of this rezoning. But I think, per the code, I think we're making the right decision to support this.
Thank you. I see you have your hand up, but it is not time for the public to comment, so I apologize. Thank you. Alder Watson.
So speaking strictly of code, not of affordable housing context, re-looking at the documents, I think, the official zoning map is not a permanent etched in stone document, and the zoning amendments are made to change that document when it's needed per the code chapters, correct? So when you look at the compatibility with the existing neighborhood, which is the character number 3, just the first sentence says that it's a residential neighborhood, which this is going to be residential, and it's a mix. The current neighborhood's a mix of owner-occupied, whole house rentals. So we already have tenants living in that neighborhood, and then non-conforming duplex, which is our multiple unit households. So this isn't a far stretch for that, thinking of what the official housing zoning map shows now. And if you go to the number 4, C and D, I mean, that considers affordable housing as a new need that needs to be addressed by our city. And supporting this construction, it's going to benefit the entire community as a whole. So although only 6 people will be housed, I mean, those 6 people definitely will benefit. They'll have that safety and security. I mean, it starts just with the trickle, right? And eventually we can get it rolling. So thank you.
Thank you. I do know that city attorney has looked up some information, is going to share it. Tammy, if there are questions you heard us ask that you think you can answer, or if there's any follow-up, I would welcome Tammy Stratz.
Just quick share this while Tammy is coming up. Thanks to my new assistant city attorney, I'm going to share with you a definition of spot zoning, which is on the League of Wisconsin Municipality website. It's the zoning FAQ number 6. What is spot zoning and when is it lawful? It's when a zoning ordinance is amended to zone a relatively small area for uses significantly different from those allowed in the surrounding area. That's use. This is proposed residential use. To favor the owner of a particular piece of property. Spot zoning is not necessarily illegal because such zoning is not necessarily inconsistent with the purposes for which zoning ordinances can be passed. However, rezoning should be consistent with long-range planning and based upon considerations which affect the whole community. Therefore, spot zoning should only be indulged in where it is in the public interest and not solely for the benefit of the one property owner requesting the rezoning. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Tammy.
Thank you.
We also have Liz on the line if you need anything.
I don't know how much more I can say except for what was in my memo. I understand this is a very difficult lots. That's why nothing's really been developed on it for many years, is because it is difficult. In order for us to do what we would like to do, we can't just build it without codes and ordinances and dealing with FEMA and dealing with the DNR. This is a difficult site. Who else is going to do it? Nobody else is going to do it because nobody else can afford to do it. This is where the ARPA money is going to shine, because now we can take a lot that the average person cannot do, and we can make something out of it, and we're going to be able to put 6 households in it. Will they stay there forever? Probably not. How many of us were tenants at some point? I was low income at some point. This is the opportunity for someone to be able to afford their rent, be able to afford their food. Maybe it's going to be a new kid that it's growing out of their household. He gets a new place for himself. Wonderful. Maybe it's an elderly couple that no longer want to do their yard work, but they can't afford rental units. You know what it's like out there. How are they going to afford it? Here's an opportunity. I've heard we should put it elsewhere. We have no place else to put it. Yes, there's probably parcels out there. We don't own them. So if we want to do that, we would now have to buy them, we would have to tear them down, we would have to do a lot more and cost more money. So we have looked at all these things. We haven't just decided, yesterday and put this plan together. We've been concentrating on this for, over a year, trying to figure out what is the best thing to do. So I understand their comments, I really do. When we bought our house, I had a woods across us. Now we have 40 houses. Do I like it? No, but you live with it. Does it hurt me? No. So I understand completely what they're saying. But you tasked me with a problem. This is a way to solve it.
Thank you. Alder Lukens.
Thank you. I'll make this quick. I just wanted to say that, so I'm a teacher as well, and when I became a teacher, I qualified for different programs through community development. So, as a new teacher, so I think the point is very well taken that, affordable housing doesn't mean, that you're going to get junk. So anyway, for renters. So I was really grateful for programs like that helped me until I could really get on my feet. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Right, I want to thank everyone for their hard work and their feedback too. So I think we are ready to go ahead and vote.
You may vote. Motion fails to receive the majority, 7-4.
All right, thank you. We are moving on to file number 230905. This is an ordinance from Public Health and Safety and Parks and Recreation Committee, amending Section 9.20.020, Regulation of Persons, and Section 1.01.025, Issuance of Citations. This is related to alcohol in parks. It looks like I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Lukens. Alder Lukens.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that when this came before the other committees, I actually was one that spoke in favor of applying this to all parks in the city. I then did hear from a resident in my district really worried about that. And, I guess that's the only one that I heard from. I understand. I guess I just kind of, I understand that originally this was meant for just certain areas, but my intent with changing that to all parks was for equity, really, that it applied to everyone. So just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think Alder Lucan's comments are a good prelude to mine. So when this had been brought before committee, initially it had focused on specific parks and therefore specific neighborhoods, because those parks reside in neighborhoods. And I had brought up initially the problem as I saw it with that approach, because if we were to do an overlay over those parks that were first suggested with a map, say, of socioeconomics and demographics and so forth, what we would have had as a result, and I made it very clear that I did not think this was an intended result, so it would have been inadvertent and nobody's planned to do so, but the result objectively and data-wise, you would have had a discriminatory impact by doing so. And so I had said that I was willing to entertain at the time being fully inclusive of all parks, and the intent of doing that was to reduce what would have been the discriminatory impact of just using select parks. So I had supported that, and the main motivation behind doing so was to get rid of that discriminatory impact geographically and otherwise. But if I'm recalling correctly, there was extensive commentary at the committee meeting that really explicitly stated that the focus of this was a particular socioeconomic segment, and that had been apparently the motivation or impetus behind this. So while the discriminatory impact of the mapping and the park selection had been mitigated in committee, I think that focusing really on one socioeconomic segment as the motivation or impetus poses significant problems with this still. And that's aside from other miscellaneous issues, but I really would worry not just with this, but with anything else that comes before us. if we're focusing specifically on those who of extreme poverty when forging code or law, I would find that very worrisome, as I do tonight, and I think it is not an endeavor that this body or any other at the municipal level should be entertaining. So I will be voting against this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. In committee, when we discussed this, I think that the concerns that Alder Killian brought up were well taken, and I think that caused us to shift gears to first make the policy consistent across all parks, to make it fair that it applies to all parks, and most of all, really, to make it easy to understand for residents and visitors alike, to not have to stop and think, okay, am I in this particular park or this particular zone, and which rules apply to which? So if we're consistent, which is the same rule that we have on the 400 block that says nobody brings open containers to our parks prior to 4 p.m., I have a hard time thinking that that is a problem, because we know what the alcohol culture has been in Wisconsin historically. And if we are such a community that we can't wait to consume that beverage until after 4 o'clock in a public place, that's a problem. And we've created exemptions for organized events that have permit approvals. We have, we've worked with Athletic Park. Like, we worked it through that organized events, facility rentals, athletic park, things like that would not be impacted. So the events that we're worried about impacts to, that's not a thing. But I think that for folks who are going to carry an open container, anybody, it's not one socioeconomic group or another. If anyone is intending to bring their open intox to our parks and act up accordingly, here's notice, don't show up before 4 o'clock. And the police department asked for this specifically to address issues that we've had in our parks, and that those issues are developed enough that they're causing folks to not want to use our parks. And, we had detailed testimony from our new police chief about that. And, we did some analysis in the committee to make it fair. We started out with a zone to try to solve a problem with the least amount of impact first. And not recognizing, until Alder Killian mentioned, just lay some demographics over top of your zone once and see what you have. He wasn't wrong about that. And so I think to open that up, and that's where we found agreement in the two committees, was open it up to all parks, make the rules consistent across all parks, try it. And the police department was the first department to come to us and say, we want to, this works in other communities. The community of Neenah has this working already, and they've had it working far longer than we've had it. They don't have the problems we have in our parks because they don't let the stuff happen. So I think that this is worth a try. Public Health and Safety also agreed that it would network with the police department to determine the effectiveness of this. If it needs adjustments, we make adjustments. So I hope that we will move this forward. I thought that we had found consensus in committee by making this uniform. So thank you.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. Again, I come and speak against this for a variety of reasons. I think when I look throughout the city of Wausau, I see a community, I think, that really cherishes its parks. And I think that to be saying to the community of the citizens of Wausau or visitors that on a given Sunday afternoon, the cousins of so-and-so, a little bit of relatives are coming in, let's go to Pleasant View Park or Oak Island Park, put some tables together and have a couple beers, and we'll socialize and we'll have fun in the afternoon. This is perhaps the only time that the relatives, I think we're hindering the citizens of the city of Wausau who maybe with one or two beers or whatever can have a nice afternoon in a park and not have the fear that if they're bringing something in, and they're being watched, that they're going to have a fine. I think if we have issues with criminal activity within our parks, let's deal with it. But I think that the social ability of our parks for over 100 years has meant a lot to the city, and with the citizens who know very well how to have a couple beers or alcohol, I think they can handle it. I trust the citizens to be able to maneuver very well, and thus I think this is really hindering a lot of the citizens of the city of Wausau. And I think that if there are larger issues that we have to be facing as a community, let's tackle those issues. We seem to be nitpicking. We take one issue at a time and we deal with it, and then we move on to what's going to be the next issue that we somehow are going to be having to deal with a certain population in the city of Wausau. I think that we have to take a look at the larger issues, and I say I have confidence in the city citizens that they know how to behave very well in the parks, and this means that so now, from now on, if this passes, and chances are that it will, I urge my relatives and my neighbors to go to Marathon Park. That will be a good place to go and have a good time. I think that the parks of the city of Wausau are up to the task, and that we can provide that with our parks. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that our police chief has shifted, but I'm going to call on Alder Killian, and then maybe you can help us afterwards. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I did want to clarify, for the sake of accuracy, what I had described in my first round of comments. So for the record and future minutes, and for city legal staff in the room, I'd like, if possible, the video of when this came to committee to be placed in future minutes, if possible, because when this initially came to committee, we did in fact hear about issues predominantly that related to socioeconomic status, and subsequent to that meeting, I received a concern, or what you might characterize as a complaint, from a citizen outside of my district, who found that when the segment this had been targeted was called "These People," in that meeting, they found that to be inappropriate and concerning. And so I guess, I'd ask the city who are, quote, "these people." So when you're targeting a segment like this, are we targeting, what are these surgeons drinking 3 martinis downtown? Is this like a corporate attorney drinking 12-year Glenfiddich? From what I heard at that committee meeting, and again, I'd urge you, Madam Chair, and the city attorney's office and the public at home to go back and review that, because those are the words that were stated. So not only were the demographics and the mathematical reality of what I described to the committee correct with the map overlay, so was my description of targeting a specific socioeconomic status. And other things had been brought up just regarding drugs and alcohol recently, and I've always said, Wisconsin, you've got the Wisconsin Trinity, you've got Packers, cheese, and alcoholism. And this moves into something I thought was a great point by our new chief recently, not long, or perhaps part of it at the swearing in, but I thought he stated very wisely, you cannot arrest away the drug problem, but I would extend that because, it's this interesting euphemism. We don't call alcohol or ethanol a drug, but that's precisely what it is. So, we kind of wash that away just in the diction and lexicon we use. But the chief was correct on the drug issue, and that principle also applies to the alcohol issue. I don't think we can cite or enforce away the prevalent alcoholism that we face in this city and other cities in the state. But, make no mistake, that is not just a municipal responsibility. Last night I touched upon the county government's role in certain things, and I think it has not been living up to its governmental role. So county government has health services, mental health services that it provides. It also has social services, so much better equipped to really handle health and human services matters. Where are they exactly? And that's not the workers, and it's not for workers like the police or Miss Rieger. Thank you to them, because they're doing a darn good job, but they don't have capes. And the government at large, and really the county, has been remiss in the way that it's handled this. And we need to ask and insist as a municipal body that they step up. We're not going to enforce this away. So I think we need to push for more robust treatment programs with both drugs and alcohol and help facilitate that access. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think anyone who's known that I've been on this policy body since 2008 also knows that between 2010 and 2014, the legal office here, the police department, and I led the charge to create multiple changes to alcohol policy in this city that has made positive impacts to the alcohol culture. And those were all aimed at problem solving. Those problems are way less severe than they once were, but we changed the way we issue licenses. We imposed a sober server requirement. We created a public intox ordinance. We created a social host ordinance. All of those things came from the ACE report that was put out by the Wisconsin Alcohol Policy Project at UW Law School. We won awards for that work. And so we've been working on substance abuse and misuse in this city for a very long time. And back when those changes got made, we didn't have near the problem with some of the things that we see happening in our parks now. But one of the recommendations in that report way back then was policy surrounding product placement, policies surrounding park usage, public spaces. We didn't enact those policies because we wanted to see what the impact was of the other things. But this really is about substance abuse and misuse. We have a culture in our state where we have households that can't have a child's birthday party without a cooler of adult beverages. Good or bad, things are normalized in Wisconsin that in other places people are like, what? And so I think that, take a look at our social host ordinance. That's targeted at a specific demographic. If your kid opens the door and lets a dozen teenagers in your house and serves them all, you pay. It's aimed at teenagers. It's aimed at keeping alcohol out of the hands of minors. So, do you target things sometimes to solve a problem? Sure you do. Does it work? Absolutely. We found that the 4 p.m. policy on the 400 block works. Why can't it work in every park? I think we need to try it. And the committees will take stock of its effectiveness. If it needs adjustments, we make adjustments. But I'd like to hear from the chief. Thank you.
All right, Chief Barnes.
First and foremost, I appreciate your thoughts, Mr. Killian, and some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. I'm not sure if I used the word "these people."
No, you did not, Chief.
Okay.
That was from an elected official.
But if I were to use the word "these people," these are individuals drinking themselves to absurd levels of intoxication at early hours of the day in our parks. And as your chief of police, I feel like one of my responsibilities is to come to you as the policymakers when I see the value and use of our parks being devalued. If you look at the value of the property in our parks, it's not only the dirt that's on them and the assets that are placed on them by the Parks Department, but it's the value they bring to the neighborhoods they're in and the people that use them. And I would tell this committee or this body that over my time at the police department, our parks are losing value. They have individuals and families who will not use them because of the alcohol use that's occurring. And I think it's entirely possible to enjoy our parks prior to 4 o'clock without having a couple beers. And you're talking to someone that enjoys a couple beers. But I also understand the behaviors associated with drinking, especially drinking at significant levels. Those behaviors, although not illegal, create an environment in which our parks are not inviting. We have seen that in our cameras that we have throughout the parks. We have seen that through complaints and investigations. And the solution to us was to come here. First off, this is not a rocket science idea that we came up with. I wish I could claim it. The Wausau Police Department is a member of the Police Executive Group. Those are all the police departments around the state that have a population in their community of 20,000 or larger. And when we sit at a round table and ask, how many of you have problems like this in your parks? Some hands go up and they say, we got the same problems you do. And others say, we don't have that problem at all. And I say, well, what's the secret? And they say, we don't and haven't for a long time allowed any drinking in our parks at any point in time. And they have a robust, valuable park system. That is why we asked for this ordinance change. That's why we came here to the Parks Committee. That's why we came to Public Health and Safety. It's an issue. We see it on a regular basis. And this is the experiment of a solution we'd like to try. And I would ask this body to pass this ordinance change. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Dinney.
Thank you, Mayor. I did support this because when the concerns about targeting were brought up, we applied it to the entire city. But in effect, we can apply it to the entire city, but if we really know the problem areas are targeted areas, in effect, we're still targeting. So I am concerned about that. But to Alder Killian's point, I think, we're trying to work on a solution which we have not completely identified any root cause for, but it certainly isn't enforcement. So I struggle with supporting this now, having talked my way through that. We do need to lean on the county for more support in these areas to give help to these people who need it and find themselves in these places. 'Cause if it was up to me, I wouldn't have a rule on it at all, because we should be able to enjoy the parks at any time. But if we're going to implement this for a period of time, Chief, would you give us some ideas, some thresholds, some safeguards that we're not finding ourselves, as some would think, potentially targeting and causing more concern, as Alder Gisselman had mentioned earlier?
I struggle with the concept of targeting as it's being described. Do we have a population of individuals that on a regular basis drink themselves to extreme intoxication in our downtown parks? Yes, we do. Do we occasionally have people in other parks in more affluent areas of our community that drink themselves into significant intoxication? Yes, we do. Their behaviors are consistent with each other when we see that. This proposed solution to improve safety and the enjoyability factors of our parks is a completely different conversation than getting resources to individuals to help them rehabilitate themselves from alcoholism. That is an important conversation for us to have. To Mr. Killian's point, when I said we will not arrest our way out of a drug problem, arresting individuals that are breaking the laws is part of the solution, but is by no means the entire solution. And so I feel like it's my responsibility as the chief of police to advocate for solutions that solve problems that our communities are dealing with, to advocate for rehabilitation resources in our community, and to advocate for preventative resources in our community. Those things, you're absolutely right. Alcohol is a drug, and I'm an advocate for rehabilitation and prevention for not only illicit drugs, but for the use of alcohol and to try and prevent people from developing substance abuse issues. But the reason for this request is to address behaviors. To me, it's as simple as we see similar behaviors in our taverns at 1 o'clock in the morning or right before bar close, because people have been sitting there drinking for hours, except everyone walking in that's in a bar at 1 o'clock in the morning, who's been at a bar at 1 o'clock in the morning before, should have a reasonable expectation of what type of behaviors they're going to see. Being in our parks at 9 o'clock in the morning, we should not expect to see those behaviors, and that's the purpose for this. I am very open. I don't know what the solution of this is going to be. I know we would work hard to communicate with everyone what this ordinance would be if passed. If we want to sunset it in a year, or you folks do, I'm very open to that. We're going to try as many creative solutions to the problems facing our community as we can, and if they don't work, I'll be the first one to stand here in front of you saying, that was a great try, but it was a swing and a miss. But in this particular case, giving our officers the tools to ensure our parks aren't a tavern at 1 o'clock in the morning, again, is my request. Thank you.
So can I just follow up on it? I agree with that. Ultimately, if we're going to solve the problem, we would like to sunset this at some point, because some of the other unintended consequences for dealing with our other issues similar to this, we're removing trash cans and dumpsters from parks. We're closing restroom facilities because of vandalism. So if if the solution is to remove services, that ultimately isn't a long-term solution for the productivity and viability and enjoyment of the rest of the citizens in this community. So, I would give it a go, but I'm really reluctant to call this a solution until I see some movement elsewhere. Thank you.
Alder Lukens.
Thank you, Mayor Rosenberg. What I've heard in the deliberations in the previous meeting when we were discussing this is that what I heard through my lens, and I think particularly my lens as a teacher and a mother and a grandmother, is that safety. I am very much for equity. I also don't think that we're going to arrest our way out of this. I very much wish there were more, there was more funding applied to social services. I agree that I would like to see that from the county. But I also have seen definitely the effects of that kind of alcohol use, and especially on kids, because of what I do. And I have also heard from people who will not now walk in some of the areas that they would before because of these situations. And, if it's a family, I mean, children are impressionable. I, as a teacher, have a responsibility to keep them safe. And so I think that is, one of the things here too. Yes, we don't want to target, but at the same time, we also have a responsibility to provide for safety, and safety for our children and our citizens. So I guess that's where, that comes from for me. So anyway, I hope that we could find some other solution, but honestly, if it's 4 o'clock, if that is going to be such a hardship on people that they can't drink until 4 o'clock in our parks, then I think that's a problem in and of itself, because there are plenty of places, and I don't think someone that just wants to have a drink in a park, I don't think that's what this is for, but I hear it to also help provide provide safety for others. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to recognize that Alder Killian has offered a motion to amend. So maybe I'll let you offer that. I recognize that Alder Larson has something to say, but this kind of
Yes,
supersedes it.
and pardon that, Madam Chair, I'm going to withdraw that, and simply I'd like to just ask the chief a question when Alder Larson is finished, if
Okay.
that's
All right.
possible. Thank you.
Yes, Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great discussion around the table here tonight on this topic, and I guess I supported this, and I'm not sure about supporting it now because of the fact that, and I don't want to target any group of people or anything. Don't make it sound like that, but as to the point of where it was, well, if I get my family together at noon and we're going to have a cookout and some beers at a park on a Sunday afternoon, who am I to who am I to say that you can't do that? While at the same time, I at the other meeting said, I'm afraid to walk down to Parker Stewart Island because of the group of people that hang out there, but I did today. I took my doggie down to see the goats, and she got caught in the electric fence.
Maybe a little too close there.
Anyway, I don't know how I'm going to vote on this yet, but I just want to commend my colleagues on the discussion on this. It's been very, very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to note now that I have a motion from Alder Denny to amend.
My unit blinked out, I'm sorry. Thank you, Gary.
Did you intend to amend?
I did,
Okay.
yes. I would move to amend that we sunset this in 1 year so as to review the efficacy.
Is there a second? I have a second by Alder Killian. Okay. The motion that we're talking about now is a sunset in 1 year. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Given the amendment, assuming it succeeds, we'll request then that Public Health and Safety take up an analysis of the effectiveness. Let's see, we're in October, or September rather, so we'll ask that they do that at the August 2024 meeting.
Okay. Alder Gisselman.
Wait, the chief.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the intention is to have this go into effect on January 1st.
January 1st.
We're going to need some time to effectively communicate to the community what those rules are to get the parks appropriately signed. So my hope would be if November
Public Health and Safety?
of 2024, if it goes into effect January 1st, 2024, we would bring a report to you outlining the
Okay.
effectiveness.
We'll have that on the November agenda then, thank you.
sorry, we're just reorganizing ourselves. But Alder Gisselman, I believe you had the floor next. Oh, we're good? Okay, just kidding. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, a question for the chief. And initially, I was going to perhaps roll this into an amendment, but I don't think it requires that. Since it's kind of a pilot program, and now Alder Denny has suggested kind of a year to revisit, would it be possible for the city council to get the monthly reports and citations that relate to any matter associated with this? So like if there's a citation, if there's a police report filed, would it be possible to get the monthly reports on those? Because in addition to assessing the quote-unquote effectiveness of this, what that data will ultimately do is we can map out kind of not just geographical prevalence of those citations and interactions, but we can also glean other information about those interactions. So if there is such a pilot, would that be possible to get those monthly?
Well, it certainly should be possible. I would say that on a quarterly basis, we put together a report for public health and safety. We can definitely have that in that report.
Would it be more convenient on a quarterly basis? Would that be more viable?
Yes, and my only hesitation is I'm very confident in our staff that are really good with our systems, but you're asking me, can we do this? And I'm like, I think so, but I don't know so. But I think there's multiple things that can be measured. One is, what is the actual impact in our parks, and are we seeing a reduction in those behaviors? Are we seeing a difference in who's utilizing our parks? Some of that will be anecdotal, but I think it's something that every one of you will be able to see for yourself. And then what we would be able to track is calls for service, those things that get coded in our system, reports or citations. I do not anticipate that we would write a lot of citations under this ordinance. Similarly, we don't write a lot of citations in other areas, for example, being in our parking ramps. But that also gives us the ability and the authority to inform people that their behavior or what they're doing is a violation of ordinance, and we ask for their compliance. Our goal is not to write a bunch of tickets here. Our goal is to have safer parks that are available and enjoyable for the entire community.
Thank you. And I guess I could ask the related question, even in the absence of citations, if there is some interaction related to the violation of an ordinance or code like this, is there some documentation of such an interaction then?
Some of the time. I guess I would give you the example. If I was walking downtown for a meeting in the morning and I saw someone drinking a beer on the 400 block, I'd go introduce myself. I'd explain we have a city ordinance, and I'd ask them to behave themselves, but there wouldn't be a record of that. If our officers are called somewhere or they're notifying our dispatch that they're out with someone and they're running their name, then there would be CAD comments to that effect, and we'd be able to collect that data. So the report that we'll be able to give you won't be absolute, but I think it'll paint a good picture of what those enforcement activities look like.
Thank you. And what I'd like to get would be a quarterly report. I'm not on public health and safety, but some of the initial parks were in District 3. So I'd like to get a quarterly report of any documentation related to this new ordinance, because I'd like to look at the data during and toward the conclusion of the pilot program. One thing I'd want to make sure is that if there is any such documentation or citation, that when we took a look at that data, it didn't turn out to be, say, 90% unhoused individuals or something. That would raise a big red flag for me. So I can perhaps work it out. I'll give you an email or call tomorrow, but I would like to likely get quarterly reports of any documented interactions on this, if possible. We can communicate about it.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Are we saying we would like to sunset this in the December meeting?
December 24 is what I would intend, December 31st.
Well,
So you'll take it up again in November?
You run a normal year, so
Okay.
12/31 of '24, absent a movement by Public Health and Safety
Sure.
and Parks and the council to
Perfect.
make it permanent. If we determine it's working, you can remove the sunset provision and it goes forward then in perpetuity. So, we'll take stock of the effort in November, and before the year is out, then decide if we want to keep it or not.
Thank you. All right. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. I don't see anybody else requesting to speak, so I think we are ready to vote on this.
You may vote.
We're waiting on Alder Herbst.
And this is the amendment, Madam Chair?
Yes, yeah, sorry to clarify, not clarify or semi-clarify. Voting on the sunset. Alrighty.
Amendment passes 11-0.
Alrighty. Now we are looking at the
Madam
motion.
Chair,
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but while we were having this discussion, something came up on my phone here that 230-604 through 606, that failed.
Yes. It required a 3/4 majority.
So that mean that
It's not happening.
It's not happening.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right.
Because I
so-
think they went out of here thinking that they lost.
Okay. All right, so we are now on the motion as amended.
Yes.
It is the ordinance amending section 9.20.020 regulation of persons and section 1.01.025 issuance of citations, alcohol in parks, with the amendment of the sunset 1 year from implementation date. Is there any further discussion? Alrighty.
You may vote. Motion passes 9-2.
All right, next up, I am asking you to suspend the rules. 12A, referral of resolutions. This does require a 2/3 majority. Looks like I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Herbst. You don't get to discuss this.
You may vote.
Okay.
Passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right, we are on file number 040805. This is a resolution approving a waiver right of first refusal, termination of deed restrictions, and approval of new deed restrictions, for 7801 International Drive. It looks like I have a motion by Alder Watson and a second by Alder Herbst. Any discussion?
I'd like to say that the draft was included in your packet because, and Randy, I don't want to call him out necessarily, but if he'd like to come up and address this as well. Since his arrival, we worked out a set of standard new deed restrictions and rules that some of you will remember that we don't require council waiver of the right of first refusal or approval, at least consent to transfer property if it's intra-family transfers and things of that nature to keep people from coming back and back and back. So this is the third or fourth one now where we're working off an original set of deed restrictions which requires consent to transfer the property if any transfer occurs, our waiver of right of first refusal to repurchase the property. And so many of these deals now are so complex like this one is, where it's not just I have an accepted offer to sell this piece of property. They're part of a giant package of assets that are bought and sold and acquired. So it's almost impossible for them to even put a value on just repurchasing the property after it's been so greatly and significantly improved. However, it's still a restriction that exists today on the record. So the lot has not sold. They wanted to wait till this came to council first. So we put everything in here, your waiver of right of first refusal, the termination of the old deed restrictions, and the implementation of the new standard deed restrictions. But with all things, I get attorneys and realtors on the other side who then want to negotiate the language of the new deed restrictions. So you've got Joe Mella's proposed changes to our new deed restrictions as they appear in here. I don't have a lot of heartburn with most of them, except for the fact that we wanted to keep them consistent. But for the one, and I'm looking now, Randy, I think it's the new J on the second to the last page where it says the city can by resolution exempt any land or portion from any deed restrictions. Then they crossed out that we may not unilaterally in the future by resolution require that they grant the city any easement needed for public purposes without cost to the city. We have had people accept those new deed restrictions. He struck that out, that we can't, require them to give us an easement for our purposes without paying them. So this isn't going to just be a vote up or down. I guess we're going to need to have a little bit of discussion as to whether or not you agree to some of these changes or you want Randy to make a recommendation and we can go from there. But I just wanted to point out that that's why you have a blue line in your packet, is because that's the draft that Joe proposed, and Randy and I didn't have time to fully flesh that out, so we just put the draft in the packet. Thank you.
Well, it looks like Randy has something to say.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the main things that we talk about when we're talking about these deed restrictions are creating standard deed restrictions, standard being the important word in all of this. What we did with the changes year 2 ago was trying to take it and simplify it a bit. So not only it reduced what they needed to do in terms of future transfers of property, but also reduced the amount of staff time it required. This isn't an opportunity to create a new menu for them to choose off of. And frankly, what we're doing with these deed restrictions are making it easier for them and lessening some of the different requirements that they currently have. By opening it up and use the easement example that Attorney Jacobson pointed out, that's really benefiting them and them only. It does not benefit the city, our residents, and I think that's where we need to be doing our jobs and our due diligence to say, no, these are put in place for a reason. That's currently in place. Why would we give that away for no reason other than to benefit their business? I understand why they're putting it forward, but at the same time, our job is to protect the citizens and the city of Wausau. So my recommendation would be that we terminate the deed restrictions and replace with our standard deed restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I'm glad that Randy said that because I was just going to say the same thing. The whole point of standard deed restrictions is standardization. We talked about that in the Economic Development Committee, and we were all on the same page with that. The other thing that I have concerns about is easements that carry price tags. And so as soon as you waive off your ability to secure an easement without money, all of a sudden, every future one you need is also going to take the same path. So sometimes you just need a simple easement for a utility line or for, some type of public purpose. And I think that we set ourselves down a rough slope if we give away our ability to secure those without fees. So I also think that we should replace the old deed restrictions with a standard set of new ones without Mr. Mello's adjustments. Do we need to amend for that?
I'm not sure quite how to handle this. Some of these, I think, are just grammatical, I might say, that do actually make more sense to me. His word changes, which don't really change the substance of it. The easement thing is a substantive change. So if you'd give me the liberty, well, like the whereases don't really matter. I mean, he struck those out, and that's fine. The black dirt and topsoil one under H, I'm sure he struck not because he disagreed with it, but simply because it didn't apply. So if it doesn't apply, don't worry about it, right? We'll just put that one back in. So if we want to say, if you want to just pass the standard restrictions and give me the liberty to go through and allow a couple of the word changes that are just grammatical in nature, I'd appreciate it.
So that's what I think we should do. I think we should approve the use of the standard deed restrictions and afford the city attorney the authority to make non-substantive corrections or changes. So that really would allow her to make these cosmetic and grammatical changes, and anything that is substantively part of the contract, that's not approved. So
is this required to be an amendment, or are we just clarifying the motion as presented?
Well, because there's a draft in here, I don't know that we need an amendment. I think we just need a motion and a second to approve the draft.
Okay.
Or to approve the standard deed restrictions as presented without the proposed drafts, but for non-substantive changes.
I'm going to look to motioner Alder Watson and seconder Alder Herbst, if that is good with you, if that is engaged. Okay. We're going to go ahead and assume that is our motion then. Alder Dinney.
Yeah, and I would agree that makes sense. He's just making a suggestion here in the draft, so this isn't like an offer, counter offer scenario. Will this slow down the closing in any way?
No, they're waiting on us. We'll inform them tomorrow or the next day. My September 18th sticks in my head, so I don't think it was going to close till next week. So no, this isn't going to be a problem. He's just trying to negotiate the best set of deed restrictions he can get for his client, but then we end up with no consistency whatsoever. So,
Because one of the sellers, one of the managers contacted me to let me know that it was closing, and Ed, thanked you for your efforts, but he didn't give me any indication that there was any curveballs here. So this is good.
Yeah, and it's not really much of a curveball. Like I said, it's just expected from attorneys that they're going to change things, but it runs afoul of our desire to have that consistency. So to the extent that he made non-substantive changes, I'm gonna go with those. Thank you.
Any further discussion here? I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised, so I think we can move ahead and vote.
You may vote. Motion passes 10 to 1.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is file number 230907. This is a resolution supporting childcare efforts by the state. Just to give you a little bit of background, I worked with Liz on this. If you're a wonk, you're probably paying attention to what's going on in Madison, and they are going to have, in theory, a special session. So this is just encouraging our governor and our legislature to work together to get it done for the people of Wisconsin. It looks like we have a motion by Alder Watson and a second by Alder Lukens. Is there any discussion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this one.
You may vote. Motion passes 11-0.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Madam Chair, I hate to interrupt again, but before we adjourn, I have one question. If those three items on the agenda failed 7-4 for the rezoning, wouldn't the Wyatt Street also fail then? Because would that also need a 3/4 vote? Because that was a 7-4 vote.
So,
also?
no, the thing that required the 3/4 vote was the petition, and that was the Wyatt Street one. I assumed you were talking about Wyatt Street when you asked the question.
No, I was
Okay,
asking about.
Wyatt Street failed, the others passed. Wyatt Street required a 3/4 because of the petition.
Oh, so the Wyatt Street failed, they won't get the rezoning?
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next up is our last opportunity for public comment and suggestions. I see only department heads here, so I'm going to assume no. I would take a motion to adjourn. I got a motion by Herbst and a second by Henke. All in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Herbst,